All right, episode 6, One Big Team podcast. Could not be more grateful to be sitting next to someone who I've looked up to for years. I've learned a lot from. I've shared his content with many people. So it's special to be in the room with Stein Jr. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. I'm so excited for our conversation.
Yeah, I'm fired up. As someone who has consumed a lot of your content, I have a very clear understanding of your path. But for the listeners, I would love if you could kind of go into maybe starting with your love of basketball and then where that's led to you being here now.
Sure. Well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. And if you want to tug on any threads and have me expand, I'm happy.
Love it.
For context, the most important thing is basketball was my first identifiable passion and my first love. I fell in love with the game at 5 years old, and here I am knocking on the door at 50 years old, and basketball is still a major pillar and passion of my life. And I share that because I'm incredibly grateful that I've been able to build a life and make a living around something that I'm so passionate about. And for the first third of my journey, I spent it as a very dedicated basketball player here in the public schools of the DC area. Was fortunate enough to end up playing down at Elon College, which is now Elon University in Burlington, North Carolina. And while I was at Elon, I started to develop an equal love for the strength and conditioning side of the game, the training side, anything that went above and beyond the skills of the game. I was devouring content on strength, conditioning, plyometrics, fitness, agility, mental performance, nutrition. And when I graduated from Elon in the late 90s, I figured what could be better than combining my original love of basketball with this newfound love of what we now call performance training. So I spent the next third of my journey as a very dedicated basketball performance coach. And I'm sure we'll dive more into that, but I chose to spend most of my time and focus working with middle school and high school age players, because that's where I felt I could have the biggest impact on their lives, not just on the. And I did that for almost 20 years before I decided to pivot into my current iteration, which is a corporate keynote speaker and author. And I'm really taking all of the lessons that I've learned through the game of basketball and through training, and I now teach folks how to apply those to their businesses and their lives. And the only other kind of dot on this third iteration is I have 3 children that all play youth basketball. I have twin sons that'll be entering 9th grade in the fall, and a daughter that will be in 7th. And all 3 are avid youth people. So I've been able to see the game of basketball and enjoy the game of basketball from 3 very distinct vantage points: as a player, as a performance coach, and now as a father sitting in the bleachers. And even though my main vocation now is working in the business world as a keynote and motivational speaker, I'm still drawing on the same lessons and disciplines and strategies that I learned from the game. So I still feel very connected to the game. I could not be more grateful that I get to do what I do for a living, and I absolutely love it.
I think one of the things that comes to my mind is this question of, if you had all the money in the world, would you change things, right? And for me and most people that I spend time with, what I pick up from you is you'd probably take care of some things, you'd invest in certain things, but would much change for you?
No, the only thing that would change is I'd stop flying Southwest and I'd fly private. That would be the only difference.
Simple stuff.
I absolutely love, and when I say being on stage, it doesn't have to be on a giant stage in front of 2,000 people. When I say stage, I consider this a stage. I consider any opportunity where I can share something that I'm very passionate about and have very strong convictions about with an open and willing and engaged audience. And for me, I mean, it's about as intoxicating of a feeling as you can have. And I absolutely love it. And, because you have this experience as well, when you're speaking to folks and you see the head nod, you see the smile, you see someone look down to write down something that you just said, is a very fulfilling feeling. I love it. So yes, to answer your question, I would keep doing what I'm doing. I would just travel at a slightly higher rate. That's all.
I do appreciate, I've been off Instagram for a little bit now. But I remember you post pictures of like a private jet and just being like, I'm traveling here, not my real jet, just so everyone knows.
Yeah.
When you said you started with the middle school, high school age, because you felt like this is the group that I could impact the most. I've spent a lot of time, and I still do, with that age group. And I agree, it's such an important age group that we can really influence. And it's super important. It's the future leaders of this world.
Sure.
So I feel a great sense of urgency to help develop them. I've also developed a lot as a communicator by going from, oh, here's a Division I commit going to West Point, who is the most mature high school student you could see, to a college player, down to a 6th grader, all in the same day, sometimes in the same hour. How did working in that environment maybe serve you now as a communicator and as a great speaker?
Well, one thing that's important to note, so even though I chose to focus at the middle school and high school level, I was able to work at 2 high school programs that aren't typical high school programs. I spent 7 years as the performance coach at Montrose Christian in Rockville, Maryland. Our most famous alum is Kevin Durant. And then I was able to work at DeMatha Catholic High School for 6 years, who has a host of players currently in the NBA. So they weren't your typical high schools. You were dealing with future Division I stars and future pros. So from a skill and athleticism standpoint, they were certainly above the curve. But my own private training business, I was working with anyone and everyone. I mean, before I decided to focus specifically on basketball, when I first started in the late 90s, I was training athletes of every single sport. Some sports that I had played, football and soccer, but I was training players in sports that I had never played, volleyball and baseball. And I realized that the fundamentals of movement and the fundamentals of mental skills have such high utility that they kind of span across all sports. And now, as I'm learning, across all vocations and in every area of life.
It's so special.
So I was able to cut my teeth on a playground of having to communicate with, as you just said so insightfully, maybe a sixth grader who might not even make the varsity team when he's older, or Kevin Durant, who's going to go on to be one of the best players that the game has ever seen. And you know, there are a few fundamental components, and it's true whether you're working with a lower level player or an elite level pro, is you have to treat them as a human being first. You know, you have to show them that you care about them as a human first and as an athlete second. But to your point, and I'm so glad you brought that up, when you're working with younger players, or many times less skilled players, it actually makes you a better coach. It's, you know, when you're working with kids that are unbelievably talented and gifted in so many ways, you can do half of a demonstration and the kid picks the skill up seamlessly, oftentimes better than I could even demonstrate it to them. But when you're working with other kids that maybe don't pick it up as quickly, you have to be more thorough and clear in your community.
Yes.
It's funny is, you know, my 3 children all play basketball, and one of my sons has a coach who's a younger coach, great guy, has the potential to be a really good coach. And I've tried to mentor him, first and foremost, because I've had so many people pour into me and mentor me. I feel it's my duty to send the elevator back down and to help others. But I've noticed that he often gets frustrated coaching my son's team because they're not a super talented, skilled team. And he was a pretty elite level player. So he's used to working with and playing alongside a higher caliber of player. And you can feel his frustration when he's trying to teach a move and the kids can't really do it. And I've pulled him aside a couple of times and say, hey, first of all, I have nothing but empathy and compassion for your frustration, but your desire is to coach at a higher level, because he's told me that. And I said, just lean into the fact that right now you have an opportunity. You have the perfect lab to improve your communication, to improve your patience, to improve your clarity, because it is hard. And we all know that in the sports world, all the great coaches that I've worked for always intentionally made practice way harder than a game would ever be. They put in so many obstacles and challenges and made practices so adverse and so tough that the games almost became easy. And I tried to explain to them, be thankful and lean in with gratitude that you have some players that maybe aren't the most talented in the world, because it's going to make you a much better coach. And then when you get to a higher level where the players can do anything you ask them to do, it will become more seamless and it will flow. So lean into that. And he's done a really great job.
Yeah. I mean, you just described it all perfectly, and such an amazing opportunity. I look at coaching and the skills coaching I was doing years ago. That's where my communication skills developed. That's where some emotional intelligence was enhanced by being able to read the room. And I do remember I went from PVI, one of the best teams in the country, had practice with the team, to a clinic with kindergarten and second grade. And I walked in there, 23 years old, thinking that I was going to turn these kids into superstars. And I was just very quickly realized the environment was different. And through that, every time I guide my coaches or others on coaching young people, it's, hey, no expectations. The only expectation is we're all going to have fun and it's going to be way better. And I've brought out younger players of mine to give back to the younger kids just so they can have that same experience. And the frustration rises up, and then we can work through it like you just described. And yeah, I'm very, very thankful that my path has been through coaching all different age groups.
I love that. There was a very pivotal moment very early in my training career. So when I graduated from Elon in the late 90s, I moved back to the DC area to pursue, a strength and conditioning profession. But when I moved back, it wasn't like at this time, again, this is the late 90s. This was a little bit before the curve. It wasn't like parents were throwing money at us to train their children. So a good portion of my income was just as a personal trainer. I was just training moms and dads. And once again, I'm still working on the basic fundamental skill sets of teaching people how to move their body and to do certain exercises. But very early in that journey, I had an opportunity to train a guy who was blind. because he was going to run the 100-meter dash in the Paralympics. And for the first couple of workouts, it was so challenging for me because I did not realize how much of my communication was based on demonstrating and telling a kid, hey, we're going to do a lunge, and I'm visually showing them as I do the lunge how to do it. And that made it much easier to communicate. Well, when I had to be able to only verbally communicate with this guy on what I needed him to do, it was incredibly challenging. But thankfully, he was super patient and he was super kind. I think he was used to people having challenge with that. So it only took maybe 3 or 4 sessions before I started to get the hang of it. Yes. I mean, it was even to the point, I know he's blind. He knows he's blind, and I'm still here trying to demonstrate a lunge. And he's like, I can't see you, right? And I'm like, yeah, I guess you can't. Yeah. All right, well, let me try to explain. Yes. And and I think I maybe only did 20 sessions total with him, but my ability to communicate, I almost feel like I got a master's degree in communication just from that experience. And he was just incredibly thoughtful and kind and patient. And I learned so much. And I'm so thankful that happened very early in my career, because that went on to serve me, so great lengths later.
Incredible. There's something we share a lot about, that we believe the content we consume, the conversations we have, shape who we are and how we see the world, right? And I think that's pretty undeniable. And I just had a reflection a few years ago, June 2021, I was diagnosed with a rare heart disease. And so I'm not really able to exercise anymore. It's a huge, huge shock to me. And at first I was very worried about the coaching, because I was very interactive with players. I would put gear on and train with them, and very quickly was able to intellectualize it and then process and be like, okay, this is my opportunity to develop as a communicator, as a speaker, and serve them in a different, more impactful way. And I just wanted to give you credit to that, because I did consume a lot of your content and I read your book, and at some level that impacted the way that I responded to that. And so I recognize the communication skills that we're talking about and how important it is. And hopefully someone listens to this and goes, wow, this communication difficulty I'm dealing with in my setting is really great opportunity for me. That would be huge. But I also just want to acknowledge in this moment, the content I've consumed of yours, the book, the podcast, the videos have had a big impact on me. And as we're going to talk about, a lot of players that I've worked with.
Well, I appreciate that so much, more than that's the highest compliment one can receive. But, kind of 2 disclaimers with that. One, none of this stuff have I come up with on my own, or I'm inventing. This is all mentors who have passed stuff down to me. This is all the content that I've consumed, and I'm trying to take it and repackage it in a way that's authentic through me and my experiences, and then pass it on and share it to others. Yeah. I'm almost 50 years old, and leadership has been around for a little bit longer than 50 years. So like I said, none of the stuff that I'm creating. And then the second disclaimer is, I'm certainly not coming from a place of mastery on any of this stuff. These are all things that I'm still working on. I'm proud of the progress that I've made. So I'm moving in the right direction in many of these different areas. Yeah. But I'm far from a finished product, and I'm certainly still under construction. But for me, one of the most important and empowering and mindsets that any of us can have is not worrying about where you are at the moment, but just be more focused on the direction that you're headed. And as long as you're headed in the right direction, be proud of that progress. And I'm a big believer, because I love structure, I love routine, I love consistency. It's daily, incremental, systematic progress. That is the name of the game. In all of these different areas, even though I'm somewhat wired to be rather impatient, I'm still playing the long game. All of these things, I'm playing the long game. And, one of the phrases that I use all the time in every single one of these areas is, I'm just here to stack days. Like, get the recipe down, figure out where you're trying to go, reverse engineer the process and systems that are most likely to help you get there, and then just stack days. And the more days you can stack, then you're going to flex that consistency muscle, and you're going to start to see results. But it's the systematic, daily, incremental progress. I'm at my current age, I'm not going to make massive progress by tomorrow in anything, but can I get just a little bit better in the key areas of my life tomorrow? And then can I get just a little bit better the next day? And if I have a day where I regress, and not only do I not get better, I actually go in the wrong direction, then give myself some grace and permission to be less than perfect, and then just start stacking new days the following day. So to me, that's most important. But I always want to make sure it's clear, in both of the books that I've written and the third book that I'm currently working on, is all been stuff that I've consumed and people have been thoughtful and kind enough to share with me. And I ain't mastered any of it. I mean, even the principles of raise your game are still things that I find challenging and struggle with. and that's okay. You know, I don't think any of us have reached the level of mastery in anything. I mean, even, you know, you look at, let's just take a sport like golf. I mean, even the best golfers on the planet, if they're being honest, will acknowledge they still haven't mastered the game. They still occasionally hit bad shots and have bad rounds and have bad days. Now, the reason they're the best on the planet is they do that so much less frequently than everybody else. They rarely hit bad shots. They rarely have bad days. And when they do, they can detach from it and course correct, and the next shot is even better. So that's, to me, that's the game that we should all be playing. And the reason I love it is that clip is applicable to my children, you know, my teenage children. That clip is applicable to someone that's running a Fortune 100 business right now, because these mental skills that you do such a brilliant job of teaching have such high utility. They apply to every single person walking the planet.
I like the master who thinks he's a master won't be a master for long. And I think you embody so much of what you do talk about, the humility, a beginner's mind, and the willingness to just say, I'm still working on this, which I think you can feel that from you, the authenticity, which is huge. You do talk a lot about core values, being in alignment with that. That's your main focus. You have your outcome goals and the vision of where you want to go to, and you're stacking days, the process, a very clear plan. But you do talk a lot about alignment of core values. And I have come to understand the immense value in that, taking the time to understand them, build your life around them, to audit yourself. And it's had a huge impact on me. I would love for you to go into maybe what some of those specific values are for you and just why it is such a important place to build a foundation from.
Sure. And before I do that, I want to say my girlfriend is here. She's thoughtful enough to be watching. And if I sat here and said that I had mastered any of these things, she would most likely jump on screen, grab the microphone, and make sure that everybody watching and listening knows he has not mastered all of this stuff. So she's here accountability. She's here to help keep me in check for sure. Core values, I think, are important because we need to be crystal clear on what it is that we believe. The next step is making sure that our daily behavior is in alignment with what we say we believe. And this is important for a few different reasons. One, and I consider everyone listening to this to be a leader, or I hope that they consider themselves to be a leader. Even if you are the last player on the bench, you still have the ability to lead, which is nothing more than choosing to have a positive influence and impact on the people around you and the environment around you. And one of the things that's important for leaders to get crystal clear on their core values, or why it's important, is it actually makes decision-making more fluid. Now, it doesn't mean that decision-making is easy, because the price tag of leadership is you have to make hard decisions. The price tag of being a coach, the price tag of being a parent, the price tag of being a CEO is you have to make hard decisions. However, if you are crystal clear on what it is that you believe, it makes that process more fluid, because now every single decision you make in your life, large and small, personal, professional, individual, organizational, every decision you make, you need to take a pause and run it through the filter of, is this in alignment with my core values or not? And as far as my own personal operating system, which is all I want to share, I'm never here to tell anyone what to do or how to behave. But for me, if what I'm about to say or do is in alignment with my core values, then I do it immediately. No hesitation, and I do it with a smile. If what I'm about to say or do is not in alignment with my core values or what I say that I believe, I at least try and pause. I take a beat, I take a breath, and I try to consciously ask myself, do I really want to say or do something that I know is not in alignment with what I'm saying I believe? And it's been my experience with myself and with thousands of high performers that I've had a chance to work with. The mere act of taking that pause is usually enough time to help course correct and make a better decision. Now, because none of us are perfect, all of us are flawed and fallible, we are still occasionally going to say or do things that aren't a representation of our best self, and say and do things that aren't in perfect alignment with what we say we believe. And that's okay. We have to give ourselves the grace and space to be less than perfect. But talking about stacking days, every single day of my life, my goal is to make as many decisions as I can that are in alignment with my core values. And I'm not batting 1,000, but I'm batting a higher percentage than I ever have at any other previous point in my life, which is why I said I'm going in the right direction. And the whole core values, it's about getting that clarity first. And then once we have that clarity, then it's just a matter of having the consciousness and self-awareness to make the best decisions possible.
Yes. As I was going through Raise Your Game, a whole section on self-awareness and identifying strengths. And I'm curious if you have found this in conversations throughout your career. I've oftentimes ask a player, what are your strengths? And there is a high percentage of players who are unable to give me anything. And I mean, I'm okay at this. I'm all right at that. And it's shocking. It's a little bit sad at times. I look at it as the opportunity. We pivot. We like to take a strength-based approach. We want to build everything around that. But when you're talking about self-awareness, your beliefs, your behaviors, have you found that with people? Do you think there's a lot of people out there in different environments that are living their life without the awareness of their strengths?
100%. I was one of them for at least 3, maybe 4 decades, if I'm being honest. I mean, similar to all the other concepts we've been talking about, I don't believe self-awareness is a destination. I don't believe anyone can just put a flag in the ground and tell the whole world, hey, I'm self-aware. It's kind of like you said, anyone that thinks they're a master is actually not a master. I think if you actually believe you are 100% self-aware, that's going to start to decline. Well, I think self-awareness is more of an ongoing process. It's daily exploration.
Yeah.
Even now in my current life, I will say, generally speaking, I am probably more aware now than I've been at any other previous time, but it still ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have some days where I feel very in tune and very aware. And then I have some other days where I know I'm riddled with blind spots. I know I'm not as in tune or in alignment as possible.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about working with younger players, I mean, if I'm going to talk to the Stein Jr. of 20 to 30 years ago, I was incredibly unaware. And I think for me at that time, I would have been able to rattle off immediately what my strengths were. I did know that part of it, but I don't think I was very honest or humble enough to acknowledge my weaknesses or my opportunities for growth. I think I was very locked into my dreams and my hopes, but I probably was not in tune with my insecurities and my fears. And to me, self-awareness, it's the holistic 360 approach to being able to know all of that.
Yes.
Know what you're good at, know where you're a little insufficient.
Yep.
Know what you love, know what you don't.
Yep.
Know what, you want to accomplish, but also know what's holding you back, your fears and your insecurities. And I think when you have the courage to be able to look at all of that, and the most important part about self-awareness is your evaluation of yourself congruent with the way the rest of the world sees you. The example I use a lot, because this was for me personally, and it's still something I'm working on, but if you were to ask me if I was a good listener, if I say, yes, I'm an extraordinary listener, and then you turn and you ask my girlfriend and she says, oh no, he's hard as a rock, then I'm probably not a good listener.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask me if I'm a good listener and I say, Mike, that's actually a skill set I really need to improve. Like, I'm getting better, but I'm not quite there yet. And you ask her and she agrees. Now the way the world sees me is congruent with how I see myself. That would actually mean I have a very high sense of self-awareness. So self-awareness is not just knowing what you do well. It's having the courage and the humility and the vulnerability to acknowledge the areas that you don't, and then being able to lean into and work in those. So basically, self-awareness is the report card you give yourself similar to the report card that others would give you. And this is never about trying to pander for somebody's approval or affection. It's just about an accuracy.
Yes.
And I think it's so important for us to acknowledge the things we do well, be proud of those, double down on those, maybe even make some of those things world-class, but it's also being able to acknowledge the areas where we fall short.
So powerful being a part of a great team, because the opportunities to get clarity of your self-awareness, the accurate perception of others of you can happen almost every day. And if you have a great coaching staff, you got great upperclassmen, there's going to be that honesty and that trust, and there's going to be a strong set of communication skills where you can constantly get feedback and then take new action. And that's one of the things, I'm sure you've seen it in all different stages of the NBA, college, and everything, is wow, high performing culture. What a gift it is for a human being to be a part of it. And I know for us, that's one of the things that we put as a priority and a premium with the academy. The kids who are part of our lacrosse training business, we're going to train you up. We're going to teach you mental skills, and we're going to give you a great environment, but you're a part of a high performing culture that you can know what these behaviors look like. You can get the feel, be in the room with the right people. But maybe going on that, like, how can a high performing culture accelerate not only your self-awareness, but then maybe the actions that follow?
Well, one of the things that's a little bit misleading about the word self-awareness is I believe the way we heighten self-awareness is by actually asking those outside of us. So you can't be fully self-aware without getting feedback from others. One of the most important parts, and this is something I've struggled with in the past, but hopefully getting better with, is I now have the humility to acknowledge that I know I have blind spots. Now, I don't know what they are. That's why they're blind spots, but I know that I have them, and I'm open to people that care enough about me to help me see those blind spots. And that's where I think being a part of a high performing team is so helpful. It's having people that care enough around you. And this could be a coach, a teacher, a sibling, a teammate, a boss, a spouse, anyone that cares enough about you that can see the things that you can't quite see, because every single one of us, we navigate the world through a very biased lens based on our upbringing, based on our experiences, based on our age, based on where we grew up, based on, the content that we've consumed. And all of those things shape how we see the world. And I forgot who said the quote originally. I would give them proper attribution. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as it is through our eyes, or as we are, rather. Yeah. And there's so much truth to that.
Yes.
So I tried again to have the humility and the honesty to take a step back and go, this situation that I'm seeing is not the truth. It's my truth. It's how I'm perceiving it. And that perception is based on all of those different factors. So when you can have people that you've insulated yourself with that see the world slightly differently than you do, and can see the way that you're behaving might be, not in your best interest, and they care enough to tell you that feedback, and the words you used earlier, accountability, is crucial. And anyone that aspires to be a high performer in any area of their life needs to have the humility to be open to feedback, and needs to be gracious enough to allow people to hold them accountable.
Yes.
I'm a huge believer that feedback is the lifeblood to high performance, and accountability is the best gift that you can give another human being. Because when you hold someone accountable, whether it's a work colleague or a coach or a teammate, basically what you're telling them is, I care so much about you, and I care so much about us, that I'm not going to let you slide. I'm not going to let you get away by violating our core value. I'm not going to let you get away by showing up with less than your best effort or attitude. I care about you. So I think in all of the relationships in my life, I try to hold people to a high standard, but then I very much want them to hold me to a high standard.
Yes.
The last thing I'll say, because I know this has been a mouthful.
It's been incredible, though.
That can be incredibly challenging, because as human beings in the moment, we always want to protect our ego. We want to protect the perception that people have of us. So in many cases, when someone holds you accountable in the moment, it is human nature to blame or complain or to make excuses or to deflect. And we all do that. But once again, I believe I do that less now than I used to, but I still occasionally do it. And the key is being able to move past that.
Yes.
Being able to say that what this person is doing right now, they are giving me a gift.
Yes.
And there's no need for me to blame, complain, or make excuses. That's only going to deflect the gift or make things worse. So I need to be open to hearing them out, and to hopefully, again, having the humility to accept the accountability, so then I can improve moving forward. And none of that is easy.
No, not at all. The thing that comes up for me is many teenagers I've worked with, they do at that age, right? And now with social media, even more so, care a lot about what people think about them and their perception, as we all do in different stages of our life. But for them, it's very heightened. And one of the lines I've used with them is, care a little about what a lot of people think about you. Really don't mind what the rest of the school thinks. People that you don't want to spend the time with, just let that go. All the people on social media care a lot about what a little group of people care about: your coaches, your teachers, your mentors, your family members. And just to give a perspective shift there, so I just wanted to mention that, because people struggle with that, right? They really do. And I think it's good to have frameworks. It's good to have a balance of, okay, I'm seeking out this external information about myself, but also I don't need all this external information that's flooding their minds all the time, right? And you said no whining, complaining, blaming, no excuses. That mentality, where we originally met, as we talked about when you first sat down, I was a lacrosse coach at Paul VI Catholic High School when they were at the Fairfax location. You came in to speak to the basketball team. I was preparing the team for our weight room session, and you walked out the door. I said, Stein Jr., what's going on, man? I've read your stuff. Good. Really nice to meet you. But the first time I ever addressed that team, when I was going to run the off season, I said one of our main rules is no whining, no complaining, no blaming. And if we can do this, it's going to create a lot of space. It's going to create a lot of opportunity for us to grow. Like, I was like, what do you think this environment's going to be like if we eliminate this completely? And then we began to fill in the void. Well, this is what it's going to be like. And it's always been a principle that I've carried with me. And I think that probably comes from John Wooden and his 2 sets of threes. And it's just amazing when a group, and you've probably seen it. And I've seen it with high school teams. You've seen it probably with business and massive organizations. When they take out that toxic language, it just opens space for good things to come in.
Oh, it sure does. Well, it kind of stems from, Jocko Willink wrote the book Extreme Ownership. That's kind of the mindset where it comes from. It's saying that I don't control circumstances or events or what people say or do, but I always control my response. And I'm not going to choose blaming, complaining, and making excuses as a response. Now, a couple distinctions I want to make. One, whatever it is that you're blaming, complaining, or making an excuse about might be very valid. I'm not even saying that it's not accurate. And the way that you see the world, it might be very true. I'm not going to argue that for 1 second. What I'm trying to let folks know is that blaming, complaining, and making excuses won't do anything to improve your situation. It won't do anything to make it better. And when you consistently choose to blame, complain, and making excuses, it's like you're navigating the world with this 100-pound weight vest on. Imagine wearing a 100-pound weight vest. Everything in your life becomes increasingly more difficult. Just walking up the stairs, one flight of stairs becomes harder. Going grocery shopping becomes harder. Let's not even talk about going out and doing a sprint workout with everything becomes harder. And what happens when you take that vest off? You immediately become more agile. And that's really what happens when you stop blaming, complaining, and making excuses. You become emotionally more agile. And I love to say that if you're not emotionally agile, you are emotionally fragile. And if you are emotionally fragile, you simply can't be the high performer that you're capable of. And the other part that I love of this from a leadership standpoint, and I know this is something you've preached in previous episodes, which I have thoroughly enjoyed, is that as leaders, we have to model the behavior that we want to see in others. So anyone listening right now, if you are a coach, if you are a boss, you have to model that behavior. If you don't want your team to blame, complain, and make excuses, then you can't blame, complain, or make excuses. If you are going to expect it of others, you have to expect it of yourself. Once again, no one is asking anyone to be perfect. Do I still occasionally blame, complain, or make excuses? Of course, because I'm human. But I do so far less frequently than I have at any other point in my life. In fact, if you would have met me 30 years ago, I was the king of blaming, complaining, and making excuses. Anytime something didn't go my way, particularly in athletics, it was never my fault. It was the coach's fault. It was the referee's fault. It was my teammates' fault. And a lot of that just comes from deep-seated fears and insecurities, to have the inability to hold yourself fully accountable. So I don't have a lot of rules for my children. I have some principles that I try to model and explain to them. And this is one of them. And it's an offshoot of, we do not control the world around us. We don't control the outer world. Circumstances, events, what other people say or do. We always control our response to those things. And I try to encourage them and to model for them to not blame, complain, or make excuses as my response. And if and when that is my initial reaction to a situation, I try to have the self-awareness to acknowledge it and move past it much quicker.
The three things that we really focus on with our rap, it's body language, focus, self-talk, right? The three things that are in our control at all times. And there's a video that you have on your YouTube that I've used with many teams, many students. And the question is simple. If everyone on your team, your coaches, everyone had your body language, would that be a good thing? So the way that I use that with one of the teams I was with this spring in San Diego, we would do weekly one-on-ones and 15-minute conversations that were super impactful. And each week I'd usually start off with a different question. And they'd sit down and be like, I got to get ready for this. And I'd be like, hey, every single person on the team had your body all the time. Would that be a good thing? Great place to start from. And let's talk about body language. Let's start getting into some of these stories that have had such an impact. I'm excited to tell you how I've seen them have such an impact on players and teams.
Wonderful.
But some of these stories that you picked up from high performers, the body language, the touches, the things that stick out to you, because for me, I recognize even right now, a little bit taller just helps me focus a little bit more. This morning I woke up, was thinking about maybe a dream I had, but I forced a 30-second smile. And then I got my hands up in the air like I just won something. And you know what? I felt different. I moved different for the next 30 minutes. So if you can go into some of those controllables, right? Our body language, the way that we speak to ourselves, the way that we frame things, I think it would be really impactful.
Be happy to. Well, for starters, just know that we are always communicating. As human beings, we're always communicating. Even when we're not speaking, we're communicating. And the primary way we communicate when we're not actually speaking is through our body language, our posture, our facial expressions. And those send unconscious messages to the folks that we're trying to communicate with. It's been said, and once again, I don't know who originally came up with the concept, but you can be an energy giver or an energy taker. You can be a fountain or you can be a drain. And that's really where body language comes in. After you turn the ball over or you miss a shot in basketball, you can have body language that looks defeated. And then that is going to drain energy from your team, where you can have, as you just said, you can literally change your posture and your physiology and convey and communicate to everyone around you. Dang it, I missed that shot, but oh well, I'm going to get back on defense and get it back. So body language is crucial. Yeah. And oftentimes the body language speaks way louder than what it is that we're actually saying. So I'm so big on the word alignment. So to me, the words we say need to be in alignment with the posture and the body language that we exude. Because if you have negative body language, but you're trying to preach a positive message, it's going to get undermined. It's going to erode. So those two things need to be in alignment. And most of the time, it's been my experience, and this was even me as a player, that players that have bad body language are completely unaware of it. They have no idea. And one of the best gifts we can give them is to heighten that awareness. And that can, in athletics in particular, can usually be done through film. Yeah. You can actually show a player, this is what you look like, after you miss a shot. Yep. Look at how you drop your shoulders, hang your head, and have a sourpuss look on your face after you turn the ball over. And most of the times they're not even aware. And in athletes in particular, I've always tried to give them the grace of, I understand the reason that you're behaving that way. You're disappointed that you missed an easy shot. That is very understandable. But just because something is understandable, it doesn't mean it's acceptable. Those two things are not synonyms. So as a former athlete myself, I understand how you feel when you miss a shot or turn the ball over, but behaving in that way is unacceptable. The other thing about body language is it's very selfish. Negative body language is an incredibly selfish trait because you're communicating to the world that it's all about me. I missed a shot. I turned it over. The referee didn't make a call when I had the ball. Well, guess what? It ain't about you. It's about us. And obviously I'm speaking in team sports here. So anytime that you're choosing to be quiet or you're choosing to broadcast bad body language, you are choosing to be selfish. And selfishness is arguably the number one dysfunction of a high performing team. So even though these things are understandable, and as coaches and as leaders, we should approach them with compassion and grace, we have to be able to teach the players. So, what we've seen when I was in the high school training space, coaches would literally make, you can't really call it a highlight tape. I guess it's a low light tape. Yeah. Here's a montage of your body language after you miss a shot. Yeah. And the player watching it, usually their mouth would drop open. Like they can't even believe that that's them because it's like an out of body experience. But most of the players that we did that with immediately course corrected because now there's this visceral conscious connection. And now when they miss a shot, they know that they're going to consciously make sure that they don't behave in the same way.
So good. There's a few examples I'm sure you've heard I want to share for the listeners and for you to get your feedback. I found that with high school kids training this, making it a part of the drill. Yeah. And I had a coach recently ask, he's like, I've tried to do some of the mental stuff this season, but it just didn't stick. How do you guys make it work? I go, we don't teach it as mental stuff. We just teach it. Like it's a part of the drill. We explain how the drill goes. Say, this is what you're going to do on the technical side. This is what you're going to do with your body language. And when you walk from here to here, this is how you're going to talk to yourself. And it just becomes a whole part of the system. But a couple of like the palms down versus palms up. So palms up, the universal sign that you're like blaming, complaining. And then palms down is this, hey, we got this, we're good. And I had one of my seniors this spring. He was really good at it. And I just told him, I go, dude, the way that makes me feel on the sideline is that you're in complete control of your next decision, which is beautiful. And then the other one, be a thumb, not a pointer, right? So when you do make a mistake, if you can go right here and point a thumb to your chest, say, hey, that's on me. I'll get better. Let's go next play. And then do a point. A pointer is the blamer, right? Yes. So, but also in body language too, and basketball is a big one. If you are the guy who scores, you better point out the guy who fed you and gave you the assist. 100%. And that goes such a long way. And I do remember seeing something about Coach K talking about, clapping for the ball in basketball. And it's not just about letting your teammate know that you're open. It's about setting yourself like completely in a state of focus for that and demonstrating confidence that you believe you're going to make the shot. Yeah.
Well, I love a couple things. One, you just said one of my favorite phrases, and one of the stickiest things that I share in my keynotes is the concept of next play. And we'll get to that in a moment. Yeah. But a couple other thoughts. One, I've had the opportunity to travel internationally in the basketball space, and I would speak to groups of players that did not speak English. And there were still a couple of things that united all of us. One of them is a smile. It doesn't matter where you live or what language you speak, you know what a smile means. But the second in the game of basketball is if you show someone 10 fingers, it means I'm open and give me the ball. So you don't have to stand around hooting and hollering and screaming, Mike, I'm open, Mike, I'm open. Get to a point where you can see my 10 fingers and it is almost like natural for you to throw me the ball. So from a communication standpoint, That is incredibly important. And,
Yeah.
and I don't know if this is true, because obviously the cool part about the internet is there's so much information out there. The bad part about the internet is there's so much information out there and you don't know what's true. But I had heard that Manute Bol, the tallest player in the history of the game, who I believe was from Sudan, did not speak English very well when he first started playing in the NBA. He was the one that came up with this phrase, my bad. Because, you know, like it's not necessarily grammatically correct to say my bad.
Yeah.
But basically he was saying that was my mistake. I'm sorry. But he just kept saying my bad, my bad. And that's, you know, I think my bad is kind of the pointing to yourself.
Yes.
I made that mistake. I own it. I'm sorry that I let you down, but let's move on to the next play. And I think that's incredibly important. This concept of next play, I first heard about when I read Coach K's first book, Leading from the Heart, which if I had to pick a single book that has had the most influence on me, not only as a coach and as a teacher and as a speaker, but as a human being, it would be Coach K's Leading with the Heart. But then where I saw it put into practice was at DeMatha Catholic High School, because it was something that at the time, Coach Mike Jones would talk about with the players all of the time. And I love that you said that we don't necessarily break mental skills into a separate component and teach that it's in the fabric of everything that we do. And one of the reasons Coach Jones is one of the most masterful coaches that I've ever had a chance to work for is he blended every concept that we believed into everything that we did. Every drill involved next play. Every scrimmage involved next play. Every practice, every film session, every game, next play. And talk about visual communication. This was the hand sign. It was like, I'm turning over the page. I'm flipping the script. Next play. You just turned the ball over. Next play. You just missed a shot. Next play. Referee didn't make a call. Next play. And we call that having a whiteboard memory. If you have a whiteboard with some stuff on it and it doesn't go the way you want, just erase it and start again. And the players that can adopt the next play mentality are the highest performers. And with that said, especially in sport, there is a time and a place to go back and revisit the mistakes you made. That is why we film games and we go back and we watch film. But the time to evaluate that is very rarely in that moment when you're still in the heat of battle. Like, we can't stop the game every time you turn the ball over to dissect all of the other options or what you could have done differently. We immediately move to the next play. We'll take a look at that tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll ask you why you chose to make that pass instead of making a different pass. But right now, we just move to the next play. And it's true in every single sport. It's true in business. You know, if you're in any type of sales and your first 3 or 4 calls or proposals or meetings don't go your way, are you dragging that defeated energy into the next one? Or you're able to move to the next play. Say, hey, my last 4 sales calls did not go the way that I'd prefer, but this next one is brand new. So I'm going to move to the next play. And I'm going to enter this next meeting with the same optimism and confidence and energy as if I had closed the previous 4. And that is not easy to do, but it's something that we can train ourselves to do. And it's a skill set that I think applies to every single area of our lives.
Yeah, it's good. The next play has had such an impact on me. With one of the teams, multiple teams we worked with, integrated it when the other team scores. We studied the film. This is when most of us would lower our energy. We would get quiet. We'd get separated. We'd get disconnected. Doesn't it make sense that we should do the behaviors that we want to see when we're all having success? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So we implemented turn to your right, high five, next play, turn to your left, high five, next play, then start walking onto the field and yelling for the guys who are on the field. I mean, the energy on the sideline, just so much more enjoyable to coach with. And to see that impact was huge. One of my favorite things when I do engage in coaching and I'm on the field, I only bring this speech out when it's like really rolling and the team's dialed. And I go, hey, I've been with some really, really good teams that say next play after the mistakes. But the very few, the championship teams that I've been with that embody excellence, they say next play after they make a play. And that's dangerous. And I love when we score, and I just start yelling next play, and the other coaches and the other players like looking over and they're like, yeah, you guys are a machine. It's a good one.
Well, I love that you brought that up, because we do tend to think of next play more of when our preferences aren't met or things don't go well. But same thing, you make a 3-pointer. If you spend too much time shimmying and dancing down the court, your man's going to score on the other end. So we always need to be able to move to the next play. And I use it in my personal life and my business life as well. I mean, as a corporate keynote speaker, trust me, there are plenty of times where someone doesn't hire me to speak for a gig that I was hoping to land. Or even just yesterday, I had a date on my calendar and the group right before they signed the contract said, we've decided not to hire a keynote speaker. So I literally had to erase something off of my calendar And that is a tough pill to swallow. But I try and have the next play mentality. And in sport, you need to momentarily have next play. There's not a lot of time to sulk or to pout or to be in your feelings. In some of these bigger issues in life, I have what I call a 24-hour rule. So I allow myself to throw myself a little pity party, to be a little grumpy, to be a little upset when something like that happens. But I just make sure the next morning when I wake up, that is now behind me. Like I'm leaving that with yesterday. But I give myself that grace and that space because I believe that we don't control our feelings and our emotions. Now we control whether or not we listen to them and we control whether or not we allow them to dictate our behavior, but you can't necessarily control how you feel. Like if somebody cuts you off in traffic and your instant, biological response is anger, frustration, irritation, you don't have any control over that. Now, what you choose to do with that energy, you are in control with. And that's why I'm so big on responses. So when I saw the email that said this group had canceled hiring me as a speaker, I was upset. I was frustrated. This is my livelihood. Like this is a big deal to me. But then I tried to take a deep breath and said, all right, this too shall pass, which is a phrase I say to myself all of the time. And next play. And even my agent, she puts that in emails. So she'll send me an email that says, hey, they had narrowed it down to 2 speakers, you and someone else, and they chose to go with the other person. Sorry, you didn't get it. Next. And she signs it, next play. And I usually write back something with some colorful language in it. And then I write back next play as well. So I think that's just, it's such a powerful concept. To not dwell on any circumstance or event.
I'm assuming that you were not educated on how to listen to your feelings and emotions as you were growing up in our culture and our society and how to identify your fears and insecurities. I'm assuming that took you into adulthood to go back, do that work, understand that language, understand what's happening within. And I know that it's only been in recent years when I've been able to really do that for myself and what a profound shift it's had for me. Can you just talk about that, as a human being, like how important it is to be able to better understand what is really going on with our brain, with our nervous system, and how we can be better versions of ourselves by listening, not suppressing emotions, feelings, because again, sports community, that was a big thing for a long time. And I'm glad you've done a lot of work in changing that, and we're trying to do the same. One Big Team podcast is powered by Mabry Academy. We are the leaders in comprehensive player and personal development. We are experts in preparing you today for where you want to be tomorrow. We have 2 big programs. We have our lacrosse program where we run comprehensive one-on-one long-term coaching, college roadmap program, and the best group training in the country, specifically right here in the DMV area. And then we also have our mental performance department, where we also work in a one-on-one capacity with teams, schools, and club organizations. And we have multiple virtual programs that you can access right now. Please check out MabryAcademy.com if you are looking to up your game and take it to the next level. Appreciate you.
Well, you said it so insightfully. I think you're reading me like a book here. Yes, in my younger years, those were massive struggles. I've gotten better at them because I've done the work and will continue to do the work. There was a phrase I heard several years ago that I mean, I'm aware of this concept, and this isn't going to blow your mind by any means, but for whatever reason, the way that this was phrased and the moment that I heard it had a profound impact. And that is, our emotions are designed to inform us, not direct us. And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. So if you can take a step back and first and foremost, give yourself permission to acknowledge that there are no such things as good and bad emotions, positive and negative emotions. That only happens when we choose to assign a label to them. Emotions by themselves are completely sterile. They're completely neutral. They're unbiased. All they are is feedback from the universe on what's going on. And we need to be able to process that as simply data. So I'm angry right now. Why am I angry right now? What is it that's making me angry? Is it really because someone cut me off in traffic, or is there something deeper? Do I feel that I was disrespected because that person cut me off in traffic, and I have some baggage and some traumas based on people disrespecting me? So it's not that this person who I've never met, never seen, cut in front of me and momentarily made me tap on the brakes. That's not what's getting me to a 10 right now. It's that is a symbol of some disrespect that maybe I felt in the past that is now really drawing up some anger. So I need to be able to sit with that and go, okay, why am I angry? And then being able to say, it's okay to be angry. So give yourself permission to feel however you're feeling. But then the most important part is having the conscious awareness to say, I'm allowed to be angry. It's okay that I'm angry. but it's not okay for me to treat someone
Yeah.
poorly because of that, or
Yeah.
to be disrespectful, or to do something to diminish someone,
Yeah.
or for me to make a reckless decision or have a reckless reaction because I'm angry.
Yep.
So there's a big difference between the two. So I try to allow myself to feel however I'm going to feel in the moment, whether it's something we would traditionally call a good emotion or a bad emotion. And I just try to remember it's simply data. It's the universe trying to tell me something right now. I have the ability to recalibrate and choose something that will move me forward or make the situation better. So I try and spend as much of my mental, physical, and emotional energy as possible on my responses. I try not to worry too much about events and circumstances.
Yep.
I want to be aware of them.
Yes.
I want to be an informed human being. I don't want to go around with my head in the sand, but I try not to worry too much about things outside of my control and focus a lot more on the response. So I just want everyone listening to know there's nothing wrong with feeling however you're feeling. Now, no one would prefer to feel angry, upset, frustrated, irritated, jealous. Like those aren't preferred emotions, but we have them for a reason. It is the universe trying to tell you something. So listen, and then you decide how you're going to respond to that. And that takes a high level of awareness and consciousness. It takes a high level of maturity and practice.
And also the education, the language, just having it in front of you. You know, it took me 30 years to get to that place. And that was because no one ever showed me also as well. And one of the things that we teach is the BPO, best possible outcome. And yeah, it's a great one. And then we use it in so many different ways. But one of the best possible outcomes from this episode is that portion that you just shared really reaches a lot of people. And specifically that conversation, the way that you gave the example of working through the emotions, that's a conversation that other people have with themselves much more frequently at a much younger age. That would be a very, very special BPO from that, because I realize one of my favorite questions to ask people, I guess I could ask you now.
Sure.
How much of the stress in your life is self-induced? And hopefully, I think the way that you're describing your lifestyle, it's much less stressful than it used to be.
Yes, but my answer to that question is 100% of it is self-induced.
Yeah.
All of it is self-induced because stress doesn't come from external events. Stress comes from your resistance to external events. So the more you push against reality, the more you push against what is, the more stress you feel. So every single ounce of stress. Now, let me take a step back. There is such a thing, obviously, as biological stress.
Yes.
There are certain unconscious responses. You know, armpits start to sweat, forehead starts to sweat, heart rate accelerates, blood pressure goes up during stressful situations. And we can't control those biological reactions, if you will.
Sure.
But we can absolutely control our response. And to me, the most stressful situations are when you identify, I don't like what's going on right now, and I don't like it so much that I'm going to resist it and push against it and wish it wasn't happening. Then stress goes through the roof. Yeah. If you can, as Bruce Lee would say, just flow like water. If you can just say whatever's happening is happening and I'm okay with what's happening, it will lower stress. Yeah. Now, we all do this to different degrees. I mean, you'd have to be a Tibetan monk to just be okay with everything that happens in the world at all times. But to your point, now that I've identified that stress is something that's self-induced, I've been able to course correct and have less stress in most areas of my life than I have in the past. There are still some situations, events, and people that can cause an increase in stress, an increase in my inability to separate the two, and I revert back to previous tendencies. Yes. But at the end of the day, I can acknowledge that's on me. And with that being said, just so your listeners and viewers don't think I've lost my mind, like I have preferences on how I want things to go. Yeah. I have preferences on how I want things to turn out. But I finally, at almost 50 years old, come to the conclusion that the world isn't going to conspire to meet all of my preferences. Whoever's in charge of this whole thing, it ain't their job to make sure Alan Stein Jr. gets everything he wants every moment of every day. So I have to acknowledge that when I don't get my preferences, how do I behave? Yeah. It's easy to be, happy and optimistic and enthusiastic when you're in the flow and things are going your way. But how do you behave when you're not getting your preferences reveals more of your true character. Absolutely. And once again, I'm getting better at being able to handle when I don't get my preferences met.
I really appreciate that you come back to that. Just explaining that it's still a process for you. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Courage is something that we talk a lot about, and it's in the 4 C's, right? Yeah. So that's a big one. Commitment, courage, capabilities, confidence. Right. And defining courage is just taking action despite being afraid. We add in, despite being afraid, it being uncomfortable or it being new. So I try to help players with the language of new. I was with a player the other day. They're like, oh, this feels weird. And I'm like, well, is it weird or is it new? You just haven't done it before. But if you keep doing new things, you'll grow, yada, yada. Where are you practicing courage at this stage of your career in life? And it might be one of the things that why I brought that up is the reality that you are, trying to get active gigs, performances, right? For your livelihood, for your family. And that doesn't always work out. So I can imagine some places, but for you, like, where are you taking action that might be new, scary, or intimidating, despite the fear? You're gathering yourself and taking proper aligned action.
If I'm being honest, I would say historically, I've allowed myself to be shackled by limiting beliefs. So I've played it safe in many areas. I've aimed too low, if you will. So, and I'll say this, and I say this with all the humility in the world. I've achieved a lot of the things that I've set out to achieve, and I've hit most of the goals, not because I'm an extraordinary performer, because I've set the bar so low that it'd be almost impossible not to hit them. And that comes from a deep-rooted insecurity and a less than opportune relationship with failure, that I'd pre-programmed in my head that failure was the worst thing you could do, that falling short of a goal is awful. So over the last several years in particular, I'm trying to stretch. I'm trying to think bigger. I'm trying to aim higher, and I'm trying to be okay with falling short.
Yeah.
So perfect example. And I'll just keep using business because it's such a black and white.
Yes.
So last year I had a revenue goal for my business of what I wanted to hit. Now I can say with a huge smile, I fell 15% short of that goal. So I did not hit the goal. However, even falling 15% short, I doubled my business from the previous year. So it was a record-breaking year by 100%. Good thing, but I still fell 15% short. So to me, that was actually a perfect goal. It was enough of a stretch that I wasn't able to actually hit it, but it still stretched me so far that I was able to in that area of my business grow. So I'm trying to do that in all of these different areas. It was funny. My girlfriend and I were watching a new show on Netflix last night called Owning Manhattan. And it's about Ryan Serhant, who's one of the biggest real estate agents and moguls in New York. And talk about thinking big. I mean, first and foremost, at the time of this show, he's trying to sell the most expensive apartment in the history of the world, $250 million for a 3-level, it's a triplex in the highest residential building in the world in New York City. And like the audacity, first and foremost, to build a building that even has that for sale. Secondly, to think there's people out there who can actually afford to buy something that costs $250 million, and then to have the audacity to believe you're the one that can sell it to someone else. He's thinking on a level that, quite honestly, I'm not there yet. I'm not anywhere close to thinking that big. So, similar to what you were talking about earlier, the content we create has a huge impact. Well, there's that old adage, we are the company we keep. We are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So for me, one of the first steps to helping me get rid of limiting beliefs and think bigger is to surround myself with people that are already doing that on a high level. I mean, I have people in my life now that even when I think I'm thinking big, they're like, Alan, are you kidding me? Like you could do twice that. Why are you still aiming so low? And it's incredibly helpful. But to your point, in addition to new, it's also very uncomfortable. Like stretching to some of it is something I still occasionally struggle with. Not to go too far off tangent. I very much grew up with a scarcity mindset, and I'm trying to reprogram to having an abundant mindset. And there are often times that I feel very constricted in my life. That scarcity really starts to rear its head. And I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to accomplish something or do something. And I'm getting better at being able to tread water in that uncomfortableness. See, in the physical world, that always came rather naturally to me. In strength and conditioning, I understood you had to learn, as the adage goes, you had to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That the way you knew you were getting stronger in the weight room were those last couple reps were really hard and it's burning and you're shaking and it's hard to eke out that last rep. And I knew that if I took it to that level of intensity and then I repeated that consistently over weeks and months, I would physically get stronger. But it all stemmed from the discomfort. If you're lifting weights and you don't feel any discomfort, trust me, you're not making any physiological change to your body. So now I'm trying to take that mindset and apply it to these other areas. If the goals I'm setting is not making me uncomfortable, then I'm not setting high enough goals. So that is an area where I'm still trying to take these shackles off and try to expand and grow. Of course, it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone else would be doing it.
I know when you were on Ed Milet's show, you guys talked about the goals And then if you set high enough goals, you might only achieve 25% of them, 40% of them, but still move so much further into your development, into your evolution. And I had a great story this spring. One of my students early in the winter were setting goals for his spring lacrosse season. And I said, what do you think? He goes, I'd like to be a contributor on varsity. And I've been working with him for a few years. I go, is that the BPO? Like really a contributor for what you can do? Last year, you were a contributor. And he's like, all right, I want to start and be like the guy. And I'm like, more. And we landed on first team All-State. And I said, for this to happen, this is what we need to do. We reverse engineered it, blah, blah, blah. So I was in California this spring and we would talk weekly. And he reaches out and he's like, Coach, I'm playing really well. I'm going to keep going, keep stacking days. And he gets first team all district. Calls me, he's pumped up. And he's like, this wouldn't have happened if we didn't do it. And I go get all region. Yeah. He ends up getting second team all region. And the most exciting thing, I could care less about the actual accolade, but I now know that he has learned that lesson of, it really pays to have the big, hairy, audacious goal, the 10x goal, and to expand those limiting beliefs, which I think expansive thinking is maybe my most favorite, enjoyable activity. I just love thinking, trying to continue to expand. What's bigger? What's better? Just enjoyable. And one of the things, actively writing the BPO book. What's the BPO? Maybe the foreword could be, it's gonna be great. And one of the things that it does, it actually brings you up against your limiting beliefs. Because when you ask, what is the best possible outcome? You're going to feel some tension when you try to expand, right? But also I'm curious for you. You said you grew up scarcity mindset. I'm sure that's also been one of your secrets to success because you probably prepare relentlessly and you probably work extremely hard. And I think it reminds me of the perfectionist or the people pleaser. Like, yeah, there are these potential negative sides of it, but it's like, wait, let's go back to the strengths. Let's pull the strengths. Let's minimize the stress. How do you see how maybe your weaknesses have also served you?
Well, I'm glad you brought up perfectionism and people pleasing because those are two things I allowed myself to be riddled with previously as well. And they rear their ugly heads occasionally now as well. But the commonality of all of that is it comes from insecurity. It comes from the constriction of thinking there's not enough out there. And that's what I'm trying to rewire. And it is not easy, but you said a word that I take a tremendous amount of pride in, and that is preparation.
Yes.
Saying, and I know I didn't come up with this, but I don't remember who I stole it from, or I'd give them credit, make preparation your separation.
Yes.
Preparation is a controllable fact. I know one of the biggest influences on that is my good friend, Jay Billis from ESPN. He is relentlessly prepared for every situation that he goes in. When he gave me kind of a quick tutorial of what he used to do preparing to call a game on ESPN, I mean, it was like he was studying for a final exams. It was the level of detail that he went in. Yeah. I mean, he knew the birth date of the 15th man on the basketball team who wasn't even going to see the court time, but he knew that, that person shared a birthday with a famous celebrity. And if they did get in the game, he'd be ready to make sure that he could make that quip. So preparation is incredibly important. Yes. But for me, especially as it comes in the speaking world, I believe preparation is a sign of respect. I think time is our most precious resource and our attention is the most valuable currency we have. And it is not lost on me that I'm going to be standing on stage trying to earn the attention of the people sitting in the audience. And I want to be very respectful of their time and their attention and make sure that I am fully prepared and that I have brought my A game to do the best I can to hit the target for them. Yes. The speaking ain't about me. It's about them. So I am relentlessly prepared. I do a pre-event call where I learn everything I can about the company, about the industry, about the people that will be in the audience. Yeah. I want to know the people in the audience. Are they in leadership? Are they in sales? Are they tenured? Are they newer? What things are going well in your industry right now that we need to celebrate and double click on? What things are challenging right now that we need to be able to strategize and be able to attack? So my goal is to know that audience as well as possible so that I make sure that's the filter that I'm going to share my content through so that it's customized and personalized to the people that I'm speaking with. And that only comes from preparation. Yeah. And because I love structure, I love routine, I love consistency. I mean, I'm maniacal about my pre-speaking routine, about my travel routine, about showing up the day before, about trying to get in the room and get on stage when no one's there so that I can visualize when the audience will be there the next day. All of these things allow me to be better prepared. And the reason that's important, my only goals when I'm on stage, first and foremost, is to be fully present. Yes. I'm not up there trying to memorize anything. I'm not looking at any notes. I have done so much work before the work that I can just simply be present. Second thing is I want to be of service. I want to make sure what I'm sharing is going to add value to the people facing me. It's not about what I want to talk about. It's about what do I believe would be most valuable for them. And then third, I want to have fun.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not having fun, they won't have fun. And if I can make it an enjoyable experience, it will actually become more meaningful, memorable, and stickier to them.
Yes.
If I can go and tell some stories, whether they're stories about my children, stories about NBA players I've worked with, it will make that material stickier because now there'll be the emotional connection of them actually enjoying the experience and being able to tie it to a lesson. And if I can do those three things, then I believe I've done everything in my power to make that a successful presentation or keynote. Now, whether or not it's received by the audience, whether or not I get a standing ovation, whether or not I get great reviews is not up to me. Like once it's left my mouth, I no longer control it and it's up to them. And as we talked about earlier, it would be my preference that everyone loved it. It would be my preference to get a standing ovation. It would be my preference that everyone gives me a 10 out of 10, but I don't always get my preferences. And I sleep better at night knowing that I did the best job that I was capable of and that I was fully prepared. And does it still sting a little if the audience doesn't mirror that feeling? Of course it does, because I'm human. But as long as I know I did the best I could, and that comes from preparation. And I am, the reason I'm so into the preparation is because that part is controllable. There's so many other factors that are uncontrollable that I want to make sure that I'm just ready to do the best that I can. And it's funny because anyone says like, what's the best speaking engagement you've ever done? And my answer is always the next one. And in fairness, I stole that from Denzel Washington. Years ago, he was interviewed and someone said, what's the best movie you've ever done? He said, it's the next one. So it's that mentality. I think the best keynote that I'll ever give is still in me, and it's going to come out the next time I take the stage.
All the things that you just described, living in alignment with your core values, the feeling that you get at the end of the day, success, your own measurement of success, the preparation, the visualization. You didn't talk about demonstrated performances, but I'm sure you can go back to them. And for us, we teach the confidence creation routine. You arrived a few minutes earlier than you said you were going to. I didn't get my chance to go through my little confidence creation routine, which I just do for a couple minutes, which is focusing on my preparation, focusing on my past success, and then visualizing. And I have players do that. Hey, if you do it for 30 seconds, better than nothing. If you do it for 10 minutes, great. If you do it every day, but you nailed on all of those things. So then it shows up as you being able to fully believe in yourself, to focus on the present moment, to be at your best when it means the most to you. So as I'm listening, and I know my mind is different than the listeners because of the content I've consumed, all these things, but it was a feeling as I'm listening. One of them was selfishly for myself. I go, man, you're on the right path, because everything that you described are things that thankfully, because I've read your book a long time ago and I've listened to your content, I'm going, man, good. I'm operating from the playbook. I believe if I stick to this process, more good things are going to happen for me. And then subsequently for the people that I work with, students especially. So I just want to acknowledge everything that you just said. So sound, so good, so grateful. Thank you.
Well, no, I appreciate that. There's three different components that I think help improve our ability to prepare. And these all go back to self-awareness, which we've already talked about. It's knowing these things. First and foremost, you need to know, do you prefer early mornings or later evenings? Like, are you more of the early bird, or are you more of the night owl? Because when you do a lot of your preparation, you should do it towards the time period that you operate in best.
Nice.
I've always operated best early morning, ever since I was a kid. I mean, I'm almost 50 years old, so I'm a product of basically most of my formal childhood years were in the 80s and early 90s. So there was a time when TV only had 3 or 4 stations and it wasn't 24-hour programming. If you got up too early on a Saturday morning, cartoons were not on yet. It was literally just fuzz on the TV until it was time for cartoons. And I vividly remember as a child waking up to watch cartoons and getting up before they were even on and just having to stand there looking at a fuzzy TV until the cartoons actually started. So I have always operated best in the morning. So I choose to do, for me, I create my schedule so that most of my physical, mental, and emotional heavy lifting is done in the morning. As many people know me, can attest, come 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, I'm fairly worthless. Like the engines have been turned off. But I tell you what, at 6, 7, 8 in the morning, I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, for sure.
With minimal exceptions.
I love it.
So you need to know on the bookends of the day, where do you operate best? Next thing you need to know is, do you work better with structure and routine, or do you work better with some spontaneity? As I've already alluded to, I much prefer structure. Like, it is hard for me to sleep at night if I don't know exactly what I'm going to do the next morning. And once again, to a maniacal, almost OCD level, if I pulled my phone out right now and showed you, even to the level I track when I eat and what I eat, but that gives me comfort.
Yes.
So none of this am I preaching that other people should adopt my operating system, but you need to know, do you operate best with structure, or do you operate best with spontaneity? And then the other part you need to know when it comes to preparation, are you more introverted or extroverted? It's been my experience that a lot of people view introversion and extroversion is how lively you are at a cocktail party. That's not my definition. My definition is, where do you derive your energy from? I personally, I'm heavily introverted.
Yeah.
I derive my energy in solitude, in quiet time, in stillness. So in order for me to be a high performer on stage or in any other area of my life, I have to block off introversion time to have that solitude. I love being with people. I love being on. There's no place I'd rather be than right now having this conversation with you. But at the risk of massive hyperbole, when we're done chatting for an hour, I'll be exhausted. I will have left everything on this podcast and in this studio, and I'll need some introversion time to refuel the tank so that the next time I need to be on, I'm ready. So for me personally, part of my preparation is knowing I thrive in the morning, is knowing that I love structure, and knowing that I need some quiet and still time. And if I can do those three things, I'm rocking and rolling. Now,
really good.
There are plenty of things that come up that prevent me from being able to do those three things, or prevent me from being able to prepare the way that I'd like. So I have to be adaptive enough to go with the flow. I mean, if you were gonna list my weaknesses, if you will, being too rigid on what I just explained and letting go of that is sometimes difficult for me. So that's why, from a speaking standpoint, that is my livelihood. That is my profession. It is something I take very seriously. I do everything in my power to block out as many things that could potentially derail my ability to prepare. So I show up for every speaking engagement the day before. I have a very rigid morning routine that I do. Now, sometimes I'm speaking at 8 a.m. Sometimes I'm speaking at noon. Sometimes I'm speaking at 8 p.m. So I might have to be able to change that a little bit. But I have very routines that I find comfort in. And that comfort gives me strength. That strength gives me confidence. So when I step out on that stage, I'm ready to rock and roll. Like, I've never gone into a speaking engagement thinking, boy, I hope this goes well.
Sure.
I go into a speaking engagement going, I'm about to kill this. I hope y'all are ready for it. And I don't say that to boast. I say that because I've done the preparation and I've gotten in the reps that I'm very confident in that area. Now, there's plenty of other areas in my life I don't have that confidence.
Sure.
You know, I tell my kids all the time, you put me on stage to give a keynote, I'm going to murder that thing. You put me in a gymnasium to sing the national anthem before a high school game, I would be an absolute wreck. I can't think of anything that would make me more anxious than doing that. So it's okay to have some of these areas compartmentalized. But for me, preparation is one of the most important pillars of why I'm incredibly confident on stage.
That, to me, what you just described is essentially, filling the cup, our energy bank. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you that I'm really proud of, there was 2 formulas that we created this spring, and both of them had a lot of success. And one of them we called the energy signature. And it's essentially the culmination of your thoughts, words, and behaviors and how they impact the team dynamic. What's your energy signature? And the kids are like, what do you mean? I go, what's your vibe? And they're like, oh, I get what you mean now. And so we had a lot of conversations about, describe your vibe to me. So it was essentially another exercise of self-awareness. What was the energy signature of us in the first quarter versus the third quarter? Just another way or perspective. But what you just shared there, I'm going to integrate as the energy bank, because what you just, like, those 3 things you need to know. And if the energy bank, if the cup is full and you're doing the right things in the morning and the evening, as I know you talked a lot about, your ability to have a more impactful, positive energy signature is going to be a lot more fluid.
Yeah. Well, I love that you shared that. One, I know I'm going to sound like an old, outdated, corny white dude, but I think a lot of kids now, they call it Riz, like charisma. What's your Riz? The first time I heard that, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, they're so funny.
But when I used to be running my cutting edge clinic, so I would travel around the world and I would hold strength and conditioning clinics for youth players. And then coaches would sit in the bleachers and watch. And one of the things that I would always say, it's part dad joke, but it's part kind of tricky question I would ask the kids. I would say, right now, I want you guys to take a guess. How much money can I take out of my bank account right now? And it was always comical because they'd give a numerical number. So some kid's yelling $10 like I'm a hobo. And then some other kid might yell, I don't know, $3 million.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not why I'm asking. what I can take out is exactly what I put in.
Mhm.
Now, I didn't want to get into the financial literacy of there's
Sure.
interest and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
That
yeah.
wasn't the point of it.
Yes.
The point was I can only take out what I've put in.
Yeah.
I can't take out more. If I've only put $100 in my bank account, I can't withdraw $200 just because I want it or just because I need it.
Yeah.
I can only take out what I've put in.
Yes.
And that makes me think of that energy bank. With
Yeah.
all of these things, the only reason I can make these withdrawals on stage when I'm in front of an audience is because I've already filled my bank before I got there. I've already done the work before the work. I've already asked the questions. I've rehearsed. I've created a customized program. I've gone through my routine. When I step on that stage, I'm ready to rock and roll. And it ain't by accident.
Yeah.
It ain't by luck.
I love it.
It's because I've done the work in advance.
Yeah.
And as I said before, I don't say that to boast. I say that because I have so much respect for the audience that's sitting there.
Yes.
I am about to take 1 hour of your life right now, and that's not lost on me. So my goal is to make sure that you like the trade, that you leave and go, I just invested 1 hour of my life with this guy standing on stage in a pair of Jordans. I want to make sure that they think that was a great trade. I am so thankful I just gave an hour of my life because I have 9 pages of notes on how I can become better at fill in the blank.
Yep.
And if they feel good about that trade, then I've done my job.
Yes. And I'm aware that I've taken an immense amount of your time, and it means so much that you're willing to do with me.
I'm loving this.
I have 2.5 more things that I'd like to throw out for you and get your perspective on. Beautiful. And then the last one being, you mentioned another book, and I'm very intrigued by that. So I do want to cap with that. So, and the other formula, and you've mentioned parts of this, right? So we call it the success formula. S equals F times E plus RC. So fun times effort plus role clarity.
Oh,
and
man, I love that.
Success being defined as peace of mind, knowing you did your best to be your best. John Wooden. Fun being defined as meaningful enthusiasm.
Oh, I like that.
Enthusiasm being defined as intense or eager enjoyment. 2 areas, friendships and fundamentals. Effort, complete mental and physical exertion on the present moment task. And then role clarity. This is the one that I thought was unique. And I again, I'm sharing this with you as someone that I look up to and getting your insights and how you've seen these elements show out in different environments. The thing with role clarity that we used, what was unique is your number one role is to be a confidence builder in others. And then we would come up with strategy, like what does that actually look like? And the team that I worked very closely with this spring, Torrey Pines High School in San Diego, this was our anchor. It was our filter. It was what we went back to. What are we doing well? What do we want to do better? Now, what are we going to do in regards to the success formula? Are you living up to this? Yada, yada. But yeah, just want your thoughts, success formula. And you mentioned fun earlier, that you get on stage. I want to have fun. And that's something that I just think we need a lot more.
Oh man, you might only have 2.5 questions left. We might have 2.5 hours
I'm ready.
left in
Come
this
on.
conversation. As I said, Jay Billis has been a huge mentor and impactful person in my life. And he always says that fun is doing difficult things well. So that's his definition of fun.
Cool.
And I think we need to have a level of fun in every single thing that we do. One of the things that you do such a masterful job of is you are crystal clear on defining the very attributes and traits that you're trying to teach and preach, whether it's on stage or on page. And that is so meaningful. I love that you can take words that we throw around we all talk about success and high performance and confidence, but your ability to articulate them in a handful of words is really masterful.
Thank you.
I really commend you. And I love, because my brain operates in the same way. I love these formulas that you're putting together. You know, you're kind of bringing math into what it is that we need to do, and you're systematizing it, which I think is brilliant. I'm glad that you touched on role clarity. There's a few thoughts that come up with role clarity. First of all, in a team environment, which is a lacrosse team, which is also a business, it's not what do I want to do? It's what does the team need me to do for us to collectively and organizationally function at our best? So you have to get people to buy into their role. One of the hardest parts of leadership is getting someone to buy into a role that is not the one they would prefer. In basketball language, since that was my life for so long, it's getting the backup point guard to accept that he is the backup point guard. Of course, he wants to be the starting point guard. Who doesn't? But in this, we need you as the backup. We need you to be the one that takes it upon yourself and has the pride to push the starter every single day in practice. That you need to be the one to be ready, because there might not be time to get ready. That when the starter is academically ineligible, twists his ankle, or has 3 fouls in the first 20 seconds of the game, that you are ready to step in. In most sports, playing the backup role is even harder than playing the starting role, because you have to prepare like you're a starter, but you don't always get the time to show that. So one of the hardest things for leaders to do is you need to clarify exactly what someone's role is. I'm going to tell you specifically with some Mike Mabry language, exactly what it is we need from you in order for our team to be successful.
Yeah.
So there's three components when it comes to role clarity. Every single person on the team has to know their role, has to embrace their role, and needs to star in their role to the best of their ability every single day.
Yep.
Those are non-negotiables. Everyone else on the team needs to respect, appreciate, and value everyone else's role.
Yep.
The starting point guard better show some love and appreciation to the backup point guard for the role that they're playing. The best player on the team needs to make sure that they show some love to the 15th man that is still contributing every single day in practice, every single day in the weight room, every single day in film session, and it needs to be acknowledged. And I think as leaders, since the starters or the sales professionals that sell the most in your company, since they tend to get most of the accolades and compensation, we have to, as leaders, make sure that we're going the extra mile to shine the light on the other folks. Shine the light on the folks that do a lot of the heavy lifting during the unseen hours. One of the things that I do during my keynote presentations when I'm about to close is I acknowledge the AV team, which we can do right now.
The man, Matt, creative scene, the best.
Matt right now is 100% off camera, but he is the linchpin to making sure that this conversation you and I are having is going to be seen by other people. He's the behind the scenes person that is making sure what you and I are so passionate about doing and discussing is going to be seen by everybody else. And it's the same thing with the AV team. And what I joke is, as a keynote speaker, I know how important the AV team is because this is what I do for a living. But most people that are sitting in an audience are not aware of the AV team unless something goes wrong. If the PowerPoint stops or something goes out, that's when you're aware of the AV team. So I always say, and I say it with a smile and a wink, that the AV team, and I usually say, you see those folks in the back that are dressed like ninjas right now? The entire success of their vocation hinges on 300 people not even knowing they exist. Think about that.
Wow.
They are making a massive and undeniable contribution to our experience and our event. And if it's done right, you won't even know they were here. So imagine that pressure. And the reason I do that is I believe in shining a light and acknowledging and praising people that do work behind the scenes. And every single team, take a basketball team, for example, when I was at DeMatha, you know, you've got guys that are going to be future NBA players, and certainly they get some limelight. You have Coach Jones, one of the best to ever blow a whistle or hold a clipboard. He gets a lot of the limelight. But how about the managers? How about the guys that are washing uniforms, washing towels, sweeping the floor, shagging balls? They need to make sure that they feel valued, respected, and appreciated because they are an important component to the success of the team. So role clarity is vital. And the last thing I'll say on this, you need to do the best you can to star in the role that you have while you work for the role that you want.
Love it.
So if you are the backup point guard, you need to take pride in being the backup point guard, but you don't have to be okay with being the backup point guard. Come in early, stay late, make an extra 300 shots before and after practice, you know, so that you can hopefully earn an opportunity to become the starting point guard. So if your coach tells you, you know, Mike, you're not a very good 3-point shooter, then you need to accept the fact that when you're in the game, you better not be jacking up threes because that is not in the best interest of the rest of the team. However, if you want to come in early and stay late and make 300 threes every single day of your life so that you can earn the right to change the coach's mind so that they say, you know what, Mike, you are a very competent 3-point shooter. Next time you're open, please pull the trigger. Then you have the ability to work for that. So I want to make sure everyone listening understands, star where you are, star in the role that you have at present, but work for the role that you want. And that's something I preach to my own children all of the time. But it's something, again, that has such high utility that applies to all of us.
And that other piece with role clarity, it was interesting. The reason that it actually came into existence was because of conversations with a couple players early in the year. I had arguably the last guy on the roster and the number one guy on the roster in the same week tell me that they weren't having fun, each for different reasons. But I said, we need to incorporate this. And then it was also more fascinating that we all had a perception of fun being goofing off, and we had to redefine what it is, right? So Jay says it's being able to do hard things well. And that's what it felt more like, being fully present, giving yourself to something bigger than yourself, which was beautiful. And then I do think with that, if everyone's having fun and everyone's growing, accepting your role as a high school kid who doesn't play, way easier. When the mission, the culture is much bigger than just who's playing on Friday night, much bigger. The last two questions, and maybe they're combined. And the first one is, why are you excited to meet yourself in the future? What are the things that you could see yourself in a year from now being like, man, I'm excited to be him, to have that conversation, to see how he's grown. And then also maybe that does play into the next book that you're working on when that comes out.
Well, I've tried to gain clarity on the person that I'm trying to become. So I'm, I know I sound like a child saying this. I'm 48 and a half, 48 and a half. So in 18 months, I'll be 50 years old. And my whole goal in every area of my life, mentally, physically, emotionally, and even spiritually, is at 50 to be the best that I've ever been.
Nice.
Now, in some areas, that it lends towards that. Most people are more emotionally fit at 50 than they were at 20. But that's not true physically.
Yeah.
We tend to hit our physical peak more in our mid to late 20s. So I'm, almost doubled that. But can I be in the best physical shape of my life at 50? I don't know. That's going to be one of the goals. So I have clarity on the person that I'm trying to become. And we can use 50 as the marker. We can use 60, 70. I mean, honestly, I'm planning to live to 100. So we can go all the way up to 100 if you like. I actually believe 50 is only going to be halftime. So the big question is, can I do the next 50 better than I did the first 50? Can I love what I'm doing? Can I have a sense of contribution and fulfillment? Can I have great relationships? Can I be physically at my best? These are the markers that are most important to me. So for me, going back to, and this is how we kind of started the conversation, every single decision I make in my life, I ask, is this taking me closer to becoming that guy? Is this taking me closer to becoming that man or not? And then every day I just try to stack as many yeses as I can. Is eating this meal going to take me closer to being a fit 50-year-old or not? And if most meals not all, if most meals I eat are in alignment with being physically healthy and well, then that's a good decision. Same thing with working out, same thing with reading, same thing with relationships, same thing with any of these different areas. And I know that time is not promised. I mean, I plan to live to 100, but that's also not completely up to me. But I'll do the best I can. So to me, that's my barometer. Now, with that being said, and this is the most important part, I think something that plagues most of society is postponing happiness, is saying, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. I'll be happy when I get that house. And, statistically and common sense lets us know that's a very short-lived happiness. Even once you achieve those things, then of course we all ask what's next. Like, I got this house, it's nice, but I really can't wait till I get the next house. I bought this house, it's my dream house, but you know what? I kind of need a beach house also. So please know that what I'm saying, I'm not postponing any of this. I'm reaping the benefits in the present moment because that's when the decisions are being made. But what I'm doing is I'm actually predicting my future. There is absolutely zero hesitation right now that I will be the best I've ever been when I'm 50. And once again, I don't say that to boast. I say that with conviction because the decisions I make now are laying bricks of the foundation to become that person. But I'm reaping the benefits in present time. So because I'm choosing to eat healthy meals and to work out and to read and to do these things, I'm reaping those benefits now. So I'm not postponing it. I don't want this to be verbal sleight of hand where someone goes, he's waiting till he's 50 to be happy. No, I'm happy now because now's when the decisions are being made. But I'm always doing things in the present that my future self will thank me for. The 50-year-old Alan Stein Jr. is going to look back and go, when you were 48 and a half, man, I'm glad you got that workout in. I'm glad you ate that salmon. I'm glad. And so to me, I get a tremendous amount of pleasure and enjoyment and fulfillment in doing that. Almost, again, because I have a witness here, to a maniacal level. I almost am so regimented and dialed in on these different attributes that I should probably let go of the clenched steering wheel a little bit. But that's where I operate best.
Inspiring.
It gives me happiness. Where some people hear this and go, going to bed at 9 o'clock and waking up at 6 to work out is misery to me. That's okay. That's not to me. I think, man, what a gift to be able to get some good sleep and wake up and go crush it in the weight room and feel awesome about myself and then carry that confidence into a relationship, into being on stage. So that's where I operate best. So one of the most important pins to put in this conversation is in no way am I saying that my operating system and my preferences are for everyone else to use or to consume. Everyone needs to figure out what makes them happy. But perfect example, we were just talking about this because we just got back from a trip to Montana. We went to Montana for 5 days. And some people's definition of a great vacation is staying up late, drinking a ton of alcohol, sleeping in, skipping workouts, like just and that is okay. That's miserable to me. I am still dialed in even on my vacations. I take days off if my body needs a day off, but I actually like coming back from a vacation feeling better than when I left.
Love it.
Feeling more rested, feeling stronger, having been around people that pour into me. So I come back feeling better than when I left. And that's what I'm trying to do, is staircase and level up in every area of my life. And as I said before, that doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by luck. It happens by a commitment and discipline and strategically organizing my life in a way where I operate best and feel best.
Yeah. Again, this is very inspiring for me with the stage that I'm at in my life. And then I believe for the parents that listen to this, it will inspire them to reflect on how they can best live in alignment. And then the younger players, because I have a lot of players who consumed all the episodes that I've done and will absolutely listen to this, for them at a younger age. To ask these questions.
Well, can I share something? And I don't know why this is so funny to me, because you probably didn't expect me to drop this name on a podcast, but someone I find unbelievably inspiring, and I've never met him, is Liam Neeson. You know why I find Liam Neeson inspiring?
What do you got?
I believe he's around 75 years old. Wow. We can Google it to fact check it. Wow. Yeah, wow is right. 75 years old. And every single year, this dude puts out a blockbuster action movie where he does all of his own stunts.
Yeah.
Think about your reference right now. I know plenty of 75-year-olds, and I mean this with as much love and compassion as I have in my heart. They're on the decline.
Yeah.
They've got one foot in the grave. Yeah. They are not mentally, physically, or emotionally anywhere near as sharp as they were.
Yep.
Like they're 75 and they look like and behave like they're 95. Yeah. And then you got this guy who's 75-ish. And he's doing his own stunts. He's jumping out of planes. It's incredible.
I love it.
So I say to myself, like, I want to be Liam Neeson. I don't actually want to be him, but when I'm 75, I want people to be like, man, who's this 50-year-old? Yes. Oh, I ain't 50, brother. I'm 75 and I'm still in the weight room pushing just as much iron as you are.
Yeah.
So to me,
I love it.
Yeah. And one day I hope to meet Liam Neeson and give him maybe an awkward handshake or a fist bump and let him know how inspiring I find that.
I love it. Let's try to make it happen. Liam Neeson, when you see this clip, reach out to Alan. I'm sure you guys have a great conversation. The thing, and I think you, as especially your background in strength conditioning and how much you appreciate movement, everything you just described, you would really appreciate this story. I was in Florida at an event at IMG, and I went and got dinner with some family friends in Sarasota, and I'm walking around and I just have a conversation with an elderly couple, and we just start jabbering, and it was just lovely. And he asked me if I play golf, and and he goes, I'm 80 years old. I still shoot in the 70s, and he's moving great. And he goes, if they called yoga exercise for golfers, I would have 15 friends still alive. And what he was really referring to is he bought into yoga back in like the 90s or 80s. He's been doing it for a long time. And he says, without a doubt, that is why he's alive and he's super healthy. And his friends, because it was called yoga and they didn't have the understanding of what the practice is, their perceptions of it, they weren't willing to buy into it. And I really thought about it. And I go, how many more people would do yoga if it was called exercise for golfers? Yeah. I could think about 20 different friends that would do yoga every day. And I think it's so important the way that we frame things, again, integrating these skills and things that you teach so masterfully in a way that it's not outside of us, it's within us. And it's so easy and fluid. And that's why I really want to help get these type of things into school systems at a younger age. Just a part of the curriculum is what we're going for. Your curriculum, because I do want to honor your time, because we're rolling. We're rolling.
I'm loving this.
The curriculum that you have created and pulled from your experiences. What's the new curriculum? What's the new book? I am really, really curious.
Well, I haven't completely finalized it. I'm kind of in the infancy of trying to organize some thoughts and some ideas.
Love it.
And with the first two books I wrote those books because those were the books I needed to read myself. So I've always found it very liberating and therapeutic to write about the very topics that I'm trying to improve. So, and this book will certainly follow suit with that. I'm not exactly sure the complete direction it's going to go, but honestly, it's going to be kind of a summary of everything we've talked about in this conversation, especially what we talked about at the end here. It's going to be something along the lines of winning the second half.
Cool.
How can I make the next 50 my best 50?
Love it.
And it's written for two distinct audiences. It's written for people that are around my age, that still got some time on the clock, that want to maximize that time. But it's also written for the younger version of Alan Stein Jr., who, if he wasn't such a hard-headed knucklehead, he would have listened to some of that advice and start applying those principles earlier. So, kind of this concept of letters to my younger self. Yeah. Now, once again, I say with a smile, the younger Alan Stein Jr. wasn't humble enough to read those letters, but I'm still going to write them anyway. And that is, what things do I know at 50 do I wish I would have known and implemented and executed when I was in my 20s to save me a tremendous amount of pain and heartache and stepping on landmines.
Sure.
But also, how can I move to the next play and say, I'm not worried about what I've done the last 50. I'm here to plant seeds and make sure the next 50 are the best. Yeah. And one of the ways I've been doing that, so one way that I try to push myself is I write at least one social post every single day. And I've done that for the last couple of years. And I put it out and I can see, does the content resonate with the audience? Is there something about it that lights people up? Are they commenting? Are they liking? And again, I'm not doing that for anyone's affection or approval. I'm doing it to see what stuff am I putting out in the world are people responding to?
Yeah.
Because if and when I write another book, it's to be of service to others. Yes. So I've got this massive database of all these different social posts. And I'm going to go back and say, which ones did other people find most meaningful? Which ones do, and I'll cross-reference that, which ones do I find most meaningful? And that's going to be kind of the epicenter of the next. And I don't know exactly how it will be organized.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, 48 lessons. It could be one of those smaller books like Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, where every single day is a very short lesson.
Love it.
Not exactly sure, but
cool.
I'm in the early stages of it, and the goal will be to actually put a physical book out on my 50th birthday.
Yeah.
January 20th, 2026, 18 months from now, I'll be ready to release a book on how to make my next 50 the best 50.
Wow.
So we shall see. And it'll be a fun process. I enjoy the process of writing and researching and collecting all of these different thoughts. And we'll see. And the first two books have been a huge lesson. Raise Your Game, my first book, commercially did fairly well.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't do James Clear well. It didn't sell 10 million copies like Atomic Habits. But for someone who never identified as an author, it's reached a lot of people. And I'm very thankful for that. Great. But I can say with all the humility in the world, the follow-up, Stein Jr, talk about an awkward silence, talk about crickets, did not do very commercially well.
Yeah.
I actually think it's a better book.
Sure.
I am just as proud of the second book as I am of the first. But for whatever reason, it didn't resonate as much. And I own that fully on myself. I think a lot of it had to do with the title. I would retitle if I had a chance to do it over again. But it's all just a lesson. Like, I don't get attached to the outcomes of writing books. Yeah. Now, if you asked me, would I prefer to be a New York Times bestseller over not? Yes, I would prefer that. Would I prefer to sell 2 million copies instead of 200,000? Yes, I would prefer that. But that's not the reason for writing the books, and nor do I have any control over that.
Yes.
So my only focus on this third book is to write the best book that I'm capable of at that time, to write something that I believe will be meaningful and in service of someone that's going to invest their time to read it. And am I writing something that means something to me? Because if I don't care about it, how am I going to convince you guys to care about it? So as long as I do those three things, if you three people are the only ones that buy a copy of it, then that part's out of my control. Yeah. But as long as I've stuck to the script of knowing that I've done this for the right reasons and I'm trying to be of service, I'll be great.
I'm so grateful for this conversation. Your energy signature is so clear and confident and rooted in all the controllables and the preparation and the years of lessons learned and really sound perspective. The conversation and multiple moments in my own mind, I'm absorbing. I'm like, man, I'm in a master class right now. How lucky am I? And if nobody listens to this, I really could give a shit less because I learned so much and I pulled a ton from it. So I'm so grateful for that. I do believe it does have the power to help a lot of people. And yes, I mean, really just an immense amount of gratitude. And I would say this as well. I hope this episode for somebody encourages them to find a limiting belief and expand upon it, empower themselves with a new set of beliefs. Because if I never did the podcast years ago and worked through that, wouldn't be here sitting with you having this conversation. And I know that this conversation is going to really enhance my skill set and I'm going to go in a really positive direction. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It really means a lot.
Oh man. Well, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to do that. I mirror everything that you just said. This was super fun. I ended the Ed Milet interview with the quote, "A candle loses nothing by lighting another candle." And we can end that one with this as well.
Love it.
So I also believe that a compliment unshared is an act of selfishness. If you have something nice to say to someone and you choose not to say it, you're being selfish. Well, same thing. If you read, watch, or listen to something that impacts your life and you choose not to share it with the people you care about, you are being selfish. So I will say that this conversation has certainly been meaningful and memorable to me, but I'm willing to bet that whoever watches this will find something in our conversation that they find helpful. And I'm asking you that if that is the case, you share it with someone else. You share a clip or you share the whole thing with someone that you want to make an impact on, because that's how we make everyone better.
Love it.
And really, a candle does lose nothing by lighting another candle. Yours doesn't shine any dimmer because you lit up 4 other candles in the room. And at the end of the day, that is ultimately what my job is.
Yeah.
It is to light candles. Sometimes that's done from being on stage. Sometimes that's done from writing on page, but it's done. We're here to light candles.
Yes.
Anyone that is in any type of leadership role is here to light candles.
Yeah.
And I think they should start by sharing this episode, or at least clips of this episode, with as many people as they can.
I love
and
it.
Make sure you share it with both Ed Milet and Liam Neeson.
Get it out there. Yes, our two. That's a dinner table conversation right there. As 2 introverts, definitely going to need some rest after this, and we go light some more candles. So grateful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.